Hello, and welcome to Journey Through the Ages. Tonight, we travel to a world defined by a single color, green. We are heading deep into the suffocatingly humid rainforests of Central America. Here, beneath a canopy so thick it swallows the sun, lie the skeletons of a titan. Colossal stone pyramids, once painted a brilliant blood red, now stand gray and weathered, choked by the vine and the root. For nearly 1,000 years, these were ghost worlds. The outside world did not believe they existed. They were rumors, whispered by local woodsmen, tales of stone giants sleeping in the mud. This was the world of the classic Maya. At their peak, they were the most advanced minds on the planet. They were a people who turned the jungle into a garden, who tracked the stars across millions of years, and who built a society so complex it rivaled ancient Rome. And then, in the heart of their golden age, they vanished, not in a single night of fire, but in a slow, agonizing unraveling. Their grand plazas emptied, their kings stopped bleeding for the gods, their voices were reclaimed by the silence of the trees. Tonight, we investigate the great Maya collapse. We will walk through their bustling markets, sit in the dark observatories of their priests, and finally, look at the scientific evidence that proves their end was a perfect storm of war, hunger, and a sky that refused to rain. Settle in. Let the distractions of the modern world fade into the mist. Our journey begins now, in the green heart of the mystery. In the early 19th century, the civilized world was arrogant. Historians believed that no great civilization could have possibly risen in the Americas. If there were ruins, they argued, they must have been the work of a lost tribe or wandering Egyptians. The men who shattered this prejudice were an unlikely pair. John Lloyd Stevens, a restless American lawyer, and Frederick Catherwood, a British architect with a hand as steady as a surgeon's. In 1839, they set out into the unmapped, volatile jungles of Honduras. They traveled by mule through mud that reached the animals' bellies, plagued by insects, and caught in the middle of a chaotic civil war. When they reached the site of Copan, they were speechless. Rising from the rot of the jungle floor were stelae, monolithic stone pillars, intricately carved with the portraits of regal, strange kings. Stevens was so convinced of the site's importance that he formally purchased the entire city of Copan from a local farmer for exactly $50. While Stevens kept a journal of their struggles, Catherwood worked in the sweltering heat. He used a camera lucida, a prism device, to project the images of the carvings onto his paper, allowing him to trace the complex glyphs with an accuracy that had never been seen before. Their published works became an international sensation. It was the first true proof that a magnificent, indigenous American civilization had risen and fallen long before Columbus. The silent cities were found. Now, the world had to know, who were the people of the corn? To understand the Maya, you must understand the sacred bargain. Their world was built on a single plant, maize. They were not just farmers, they were the people of the corn. Maize was their food, their currency, and their god. The classic Maya world, from 250 to 900 AD, was a dynamic network of independent city-states. Rivals like Tikal, Palenque, and the Serpent Kingdom of Calakmul. These cities were centers of high art and brutal politics. At the heart of each sat the Holy Lord. The Maya king was more than a ruler. He was a shaman. He was the bridge between the mortal world and the supernatural realm of the gods. His primary duty was to maintain the cosmic order. He was responsible for the rising of the sun and, most importantly, the falling of the rain. To keep this bargain, the king had to offer the most potent substance in the universe, his own blood. In deeply ritualized ceremonies, the king would draw his own blood, allowing it to fall onto strips of bark paper, which were then burned. In the rising smoke, it was believed a portal would open, through which the king could speak to the ancestors. This was the contract. The people fed the king with the tribute of their harvest, and the king fed the gods with his blood. As long as this bargain held, the rains fell, the corn grew, and the cities flourished. But this system was dangerously brittle. It relied on the belief that a man could control the weather. If the rains ever truly failed, the king's divinity would shatter. While the kings bled, the priests watched. The Maya were obsessed with time. They believed it was not a straight line, but a series of interlocking gears, cycles within cycles. They developed a mathematical system that was centuries ahead of Europe. They used a base 20 system and, brilliantly, they independently invented the concept of zero. This allowed them to make calculations that reached into the millions. They used 3 calendars: the sacred count, the solar year, and the long count, a linear count of days that started from a mythical creation date, thousands of years in the past. From the tops of their pyramids, priest astronomers tracked the movements of the moon, the sun, and the planet Venus with terrifying accuracy. They could predict eclipses and the cycles of the stars. They saw the cosmos as a vast, predictable machine. Their goal was to align their society with these sacred rhythms. Every temple, every plaza, and every sacrifice was timed to the heartbeat of the stars. But even as they mastered the heavens, they were losing control of the earth. The first sign of the collapse is written in the absence of dates. Around 750 AD, the great cities of the south began to fall silent. The kings stopped commissioning monuments. The dates simply cease. Why? Modern archaeology and climate detectives have finally found the answer. It was a self-inflicted wound. The Maya had pushed their environment to its breaking point. To feed their exploding population, they deforested the hills. To create the brilliant white lime plaster for their pyramids, they burned millions of acres of green wood. Without the trees, the thin soil washed away. The land became a dust bowl, and then the sky fell silent. Scientists who analyzed stalagmites in deep caves found proof of a century-long mega-drought. For decades, the rains simply stopped. The great reservoirs of Tikal turned into cracked mud. The maize withered. The kings performed more and more bloodletting, piercing themselves until they were weak. But the sky remained blue and empty. The people, starving and desperate, looked at their divine kings and saw only men. The social contract dissolved. The cities didn't die in a war. They were abandoned by a people who had no choice but to leave. The Maya collapse was not an extinction. It was a transformation. The people abandoned the grand, unsustainable model of the shaman-kings and melted back into the jungle or moved north to the coast. The silent cities were not burned. They were reclaimed. Over the centuries, seeds carried by the wind took root in the cracks of the plazas. Roots split the stone of the temples. The great cities became green mountains, hidden until the explorers arrived. Today, 7 million Maya people still live in these lands. They speak the ancient languages. They weave the ancient patterns. They are the living proof that a culture is more than its monuments. The story of the Maya is a mirror. It warns us about the balance between our ambition and our environment. It tells us that no civilization, no matter how grand, is guaranteed to last forever. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May the mystery of the silent cities bring you a sense of wonder and a calm, restful night. Sleep well.